we live in a world of social media. I would say that to me, the next best tape, okay, of a college quarterback that I saw was Tyler Shough from Louisville.
You're tuned in to the Ross Tucker Football Podcast, guiding your gridiron journey, none other than your host, former NFL lineman, Ross Tucker.
Oh, yeah, it is. But it's not just any Ross Tucker Football Podcast. It is a teaching tutorial Thursday, which means a couple things. In the off season, it's our last new episode of the week. We do 3 episodes a week here of the RTFP in the off season. That said, if you want to hear this voice or get more football knowledge over the next couple days, excellent college draft podcast with Emory Hunt, in which we went over his top-ranked quarterbacks. We'll get to that momentarily. Love the Even Money betting podcast this week. If you're into betting even a little bit, Steve and I went over our lessons learned, which isn't really just betting stuff. It's just in total football knowledge stuff in terms of teams going for it more on fourth downs, leaning even more into teams with good quarterbacks and good head coaches, simplifying things a little bit. And then the Fantasy Feast was terrific. If you care about coaching changes and what you think the impact will be, John Daigle and I on Wednesday's Fantasy Feast went over every coaching change in the NFC and what we think that means from a fantasy perspective. So plenty of content to get Friday, Saturday, Sunday. Monday, we will have a very special guest. Today, though, is a teaching tutorial Thursday. It's presented by DraftKings. DraftKings, the crown is yours. I do have winners for this week, so hopefully I'll remember later in the show to announce them. Those of you that spread the word via social media at Ross Tucker Pod, at Ross Tucker NFL, or you take advantage of any of our awesome sponsors like westshorehome.com/Ross, or simply subscribe and make a comment on YouTube, youtube.com/Ross Tucker NFL. But first, it is our guy, Greg Cosell, who's presented by Smirnoff, the world's #1 vodka. Please drink responsibly. It's Big Show time.
The Big Show.
Okay, Greg, there's really no time to waste. I was mapping it out. Last week, we're recapping the Super Bowl. And the way I look at it, Greg, if we go a different position every week leading up to the draft with your film review and maybe take 1 week off to just talk about some of the big free agent signings, we'll be at the draft. You know, the next thing you know is like 8 positions. We'll be there. It never really slows down. I know you're going to the Combine next week, so we'll talk about that a little bit more next week with who in particular you're looking to see at the Combine next week. I think they start the workouts Thursday and Friday, late next week. But I guess we got to start with quarterbacks. It's always the big one for obvious reasons. And let's just start with this. You've been doing this now, I don't know. I mean, I know you've been doing NFL films for 45 years. You've been watching quarterback prospects for a long time. So I think I want to get your opinion, just kind of overall as a group, what you see from this year's crop of quarterbacks.
You know, I think that the feeling would be that it's not necessarily a great class. You know, I think one of the things you always have to keep in mind when you evaluate quarterbacks, of course, everybody starts, Ross, with their traits and their attributes. But then you have to think about how they can be deployed with those traits and attributes in an NFL offense. There's very few transcendent quarterbacks, guys that you could just say, this guy could do anything in any system, and you just line him up and he can play. You know, there's not a lot of those guys. So you have to start to think about, okay, what can this guy do in a given kind of system? What's the best fit for him? And I think that's where coaching and team comes into play. And not only the offensive side of the ball, but very often the defensive side of the ball. I mean, we just saw a team with the Philadelphia Eagles win a Super Bowl where their defense was the #1 defense in the league and was absolutely dominant. And you can play a certain way on offense knowing that, you know what, the game's never going to be out of hand because your defense keeps you in the game. So when I watch quarterbacks, and everybody does this, they start with traits and attributes, but I know the way I think about it is, okay, what is he in the league? Not what is he in college football, what is he in the league? And I think you have to think in those terms, because what are we doing here? We're projecting and transitioning players to the next level.
You know, you just said something, Greg, I thought was really interesting and absolutely correct and not talked about enough. There really aren't that many guys who you can envision, man, pretty much no matter what team he played for, he would really play well. I mean, Josh Allen for sure, is one that jumps to mind for me. Mahomes, but it's not as many as you think it is.
No. And I think, you have to think about that. Every year is a different year. So all we have are the quarterbacks in this draft, and we'll get to them in a sec. But you have to think in terms of, okay, how do they fit in the league? Look, just as a crazy example, unrelated to the players in this draft, what did everybody say about Sam Darnold this year? That Kevin O'Connell did such a great job with him that all of a sudden a guy that played a certain way prior to this year really didn't play that way this year because of the coaching, the system, probably many other factors because we were not in the building. But, those are really important things to consider, and you don't know the answer to that when you're evaluating a college quarterback. You don't know where he's going to go.
I also think, Greg, I think it should be noted, last year was a really good year for quarterbacks.
Yeah.
I mean, a really good year. I don't think we have really talked about that enough, but you think about Jaden Daniels was fantastic, obviously, but even the sixth quarterback taken, Greg, Bo Nix led his team to the playoffs. I mean, think about it. I'll put Caleb Williams aside for a second, okay? Jaden Daniels, obviously fantastic, right? We all know that. Drake May did some really good things.
In a really hard situation, by the way.
Yep. J.J. McCarthy got hurt, didn't get a chance to play. Bo Nix did some really good things and helped get the Broncos to the playoffs for the first time in like 10 years. And he didn't play as much, but Michael Penix Jr., I thought, did some good things those last few weeks, too.
I would agree. And I think Bo Nix is a great example of what we're talking about. I don't think Bo Nix was an automatic, he had to go to a coach like Sean Payton, which, by the way, I said that last year when I finished my evaluation of Bo Nix, which was actually in mid-February, right around this time a year ago. And I said that he would be a really good fit in a Sean Payton system. You have to think like that when you evaluate quarterbacks, because that's what we're doing.
Okay, so let's get into this group. Is there a guy, Greg, that you thought this is the guy I like the most this year? This is my number one guy. Is there a guy that jumped out at you in that way or not really?
I would say the one guy that jumped out to me in that way is Cam Ward. Cam Ward has higher level quarterback traits. I mean, he's got a live arm. He's got a playmaking dimension. He can work efficiently from the pocket, all three levels of the defense. He can throw with velocity. He can throw with touch. He's got arm strength. He can layer throws. He can make plays outside of structure clearly. We saw that a whole lot. Now, there was a looseness and lack of discipline at times to his game. I'm not a coach. I'm never sure how coaches deal with that, Ross. And I'm not comparing him to Patrick Mahomes, so I don't want people to think that this is a direct comparison. But I remember when Mahomes came out, there was a big concern about that with him, that there was kind of a recklessness to his game in college, and there were a lot of people that were concerned about it. It's why he was not the first pick in the draft. And obviously we know what's happened since. But, so I think there's always a fine line there. I'm not sure how you channel that as a coach. But to me, Ward would be the quarterback that, if I had to make a list, would be quarterback one.
So, a lot of interesting things there that you just said. Number one, he did it at 3 different colleges, Greg.
He was not a recruited player. He was not a recruited player.
I'm sorry, what did you say?
He was not a recruited player coming out of high school.
No, I know. So my point is, I know there were similarities between the offenses at all 3 places, But if I'm a team, I'm saying that's pretty impressive. To
Yeah.
go to 3 different places, 3 different teammates, coaches, the whole deal, and he was good at all 3. That would be a feather in his cap. That'd be a positive evaluation. And it's so interesting because Monday on the College Draft Podcast, I talked to Emory Hunt, and he compared him to Mahomes, sort of in the way in which you did, right? Which, like, man, he'll make some amazing plays, but he'll also make some plays where you're thinking, what is that?
Right.
And then you have to decide how you feel about that.
Right. And how you coach it, which, you and I are not quarterback coaches, so I don't know how they talk to, like, for instance, I don't know how Andy Reid talked to Mahomes when he first got him. You don't know the answer to that. You'd have to be there.
Just out of curiosity, Greg, with Cam Ward, going back to last year, any idea kind of where you would have had him, like compared to Caleb Williams, Jaden Daniels, Drake May, Bo Nix, Penix Jr.? Is he clearly below that group? Is he in the middle of that group? I know I'm asking at the top of your head, is that you don't have like numerical grades.
To me, and I'm sure there's going to be disagreement, and that's the fun of this. I don't see why Cam Ward, wouldn't fit into that group in the discussion. I mean, what do we always hear about now from coaches? I'm not talking about, just from people, is that you want a guy who can work from the pocket. You want a guy who can get outside the pocket and make plays. You want a guy that has mobility. You want a guy with a good arm that can attack all 3 levels. Cam Ward can do all that. So, again, and I've actually heard really good things from people who know him about the kid, that he's a dog, and he's that kind of guy. So I don't see why, personally, he wouldn't be in that category of conversation.
Is there a guy number 2 for you? Like, is there a second guy when you watch the tape that really jumped out?
I would say that, it's funny, Ross. We live in a world of social media. I would say that to me, the next best tape, okay, of a college quarterback that I saw was Tyler Shough from Louisville. And I was fascinated by this kid. And I don't know where he's going to get drafted. It would not surprise me at all, Ross, if you start hearing his name, hear people start saying, well, he's going to start moving up. He's 24 years old. I've spoken to former GMs who say that's not an issue at all. If the guy plays 10 years, 12 years, so what? He'll be 36. Quarterbacks play at that age. There's an injury history that's probably a little more concerning. He's 6'5". He's 224. This kid, I loved his tape. He looks the part of an NFL quarterback. He's got clean mechanics. He stayed on the midline. These are the little details that I look for. So many college quarterbacks, they drift. They create their own pressure. They don't do the little details of the position. I mean, this kid played 7 years of college football. I think he's a higher level prospect. I really do. I mean, and while he's probably a true pocket quarterback, he has enough movement that he can run for a first down and he can get out of the pocket and make throws. He made a lot of off-platform throws. I really like Tyler Shough a lot. Again, I don't know where he's going to get drafted, but I thought his tape was really good.
So interesting because I've only started to really hear his name a lot, Greg, over the last week or so. Like you hear so much about Shedeur Sanders, Cam Ward, to a lesser extent, Jalen Milroe, Jackson Dart. Tyler Shough's name is just starting to really, really get some attention, which I think is interesting. As you talked about him, it sounds like there's a lot of similarities to what you said about Drake May last year, although Drake May is obviously a lot younger.
Right.
But in terms of the physical traits and tools and how
Ross,
they look in the pocket.
You played. When a quarterback is 6'5", that's a big man. And there's a big difference between 6'5" and 6'1". You know that. There's a big difference. And, years and years ago, we used to never think about quarterbacks unless they were 6'3". The game has clearly changed, and you have to grow with the game. I mean, obviously, quarterbacks who are 6 feet, 6'1", can come in this league and be really good quarterbacks. Look at the development of someone like Baker Mayfield. He's not a big guy, and he's really developed into a higher level quality NFL quarterback. But, you see these guys, I mean, I remember being on the field last year at the Combine and introducing myself to Drake May. He's a big dude now.
Yeah.
I mean, you've probably seen him in person. Did you do Patriots
I
games?
did 2 Patriots games. Yeah, Cardinals and Chargers.
I mean, that guy's a big dude.
Yeah.
You know,
And with a baby face. Looks like he could be in high school.
I know, but I mean, that means something. When the guys are that big, to me, that's a trait. You know, and
Well, especially, trying to get him down on the ground, trying to all those things. I mean, anytime you saw Cam Newton or Ben Roethlisberger in person, it was like, holy crap. And then you could see it was holy crap when defensive linemen couldn't get him down.
I mean, I've had the opportunity to stand next to Josh Allen, and you have too. I know you've done Buffalo games. I mean, that's a big man. That is just a big man.
All right, curious, who would be, that's interesting about Shough being the second name you bring up. Who would be the third name that you bring
we got
up?
to talk about Shedeur Sanders, and I like him. I mean, but I think he's a perfect example to me. Like, I think he throws a beautiful ball. I think his ball placement is good. I think he throws it well on the move. He's got to clean up some stuff in the pocket. He doesn't have very good pocket awareness. He has a tendency to hold the ball with one hand. Now, these are coachable things, but that needs to be cleaned up. He tends and he was under a lot of pressure. There were a lot of plays where he had no chance, zero chance. But what he does have a tendency to do, and this also has to be cleaned up, is retreat backwards. And this is an offensive lineman. You can't retreat backwards in the NFL. So, but I think overall, you're talking about a shorter quarterback who's a pocket player. So to me, he's a ball distributor and an executor of an offense. He needs the system to work for him. He needs a run game. He needs a good O-line. He's a piece. He's a piece of an offense. Again, I never know where guys are going to get drafted. The player, I've talked to some scouts, the name that often comes up as a comparison for him is Geno Smith. And Geno Smith is a little bit bigger with a better overall arm, but he's probably that kind of quarterback.
So that's interesting because I definitely think that Geno has a stronger arm.
He
no
does.
question.
He does.
And my thing for Shedeur, is there any similarities to Bo Nix there at all, Greg?
I think Nix is a much better athlete.
Interesting. Okay.
Yeah. To me, Shedeur is similar, but not as gifted as C.J. Stroud. Like, he's a pocket quarterback who needs, good O-line, good system. He needs things in place. But Stroud, to me, is a better thrower.
Yeah, I'll say this. He's tough as nails because he took some incredible shots.
Question.
I do get frustrated. Their O-line his first year especially was so bad that I think maybe he got some bad traits. But usually, Greg, the security of the pocket is stepping up, not retreating.
Right. I mean, I think he can be a quality starter in the NFL, no question. But I think it goes back to how we started this conversation, Ross. I think he needs, to be in a certain kind of situation, which most quarterbacks do. This is not a knock on Shedeur Sanders. But my guess is, and again, no one knows about the draft. Quarterbacks often get drafted higher. But I've spoken to a lot of people, and this is my evaluation too. I just gave you my evaluation. But I've also spoken to people who think in an ideal world, he's a late first, early second round type player.
Right. Well, he doesn't really have, top 5, top 10 pick physical traits.
No. And that's okay. That doesn't mean he can't play in the league.
What about I wanted to ask you about, I don't know if there's another guy that really jumps out to you. And if there is, we can talk about them, whether it's Jackson Dart or Kyle McCord or whoever. But I'm curious to get your opinion on Jalen Milroe from Alabama. Have you had a chance to watch him, Greg?
Yeah, I've seen. I need to do more work on him. I watched 9 games last summer from 2023, and I think I've done 3 games this year.
Because my thing about him is, now he does have physical traits. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like he is fast. He has a strong arm, but I guess I was hoping for more from him this year.
Yeah.
I'm actually a little surprised he left school.
Yeah, I mean, see, I think, to me, his transition projection will be a function of what coaches and evaluators value in the quarterback position, because he's not really a nuanced pocket player. He's got a big arm, and he's dynamically explosive as a runner. I mean, and he's got a physical presence. I mean, this guy, when he runs, I mean, he almost looks like an old school fullback with dynamic speed. I mean, there's no question about that. I mean, he can take the multiple concepts in the design quarterback run game to another level. I mean, this guy is like that. He certainly has the arm strength. He's got an aggressive throwing mentality. He just doesn't really have the nuance and the subtlety as a pocket passer with the footwork and the vision, the timing, the anticipation to consistently pick apart a defense. He doesn't have that right now. So the question is, Ross, what does that mean? You know, how can then he be used in an offense?
How does he compare to Hurts, Greg?
I think the offense would have to be somewhat similar. You know, I think you'd view him. Don't forget, you know, Jalen Hurts, obviously, when he came out, we all know the story. He was not drafted to be a starting quarterback in the league because the Eagles still had Carson Wentz, and they thought he was still the guy. And obviously, things have changed dramatically. But we also saw what the Eagles' offense was this year, and Hurts was phenomenal in the context of that offense. But it was not a passing offense. Although he made some big-time throws throughout the season when they were needed, and he's certainly capable of that. I think Milroe, you're thinking of him along those same lines.
Check him out on social media at Greg Cosell. Looking forward to getting a little combine preview, as well as get Greg's thoughts on Jackson Dart, Kyle McCord, and some of these other guys next week here on the Ross Tucker Football Podcast. Thank you, Greg.
Thanks, Ross.
I'm on this site right now, SmirnoffDrops.com. This is awesome. They have some truly unique, incredible items that you can get handpicked by a bunch of different celebrities, including Super Bowl champ Vernon Davis, for just $12.99, just like a bottle of Smirnoff. You guys know I love Smirnoff because they're an official vodka partner of the NFL, of the Super Bowl, of my show, and you don't need to break the bank. That's what's so Smirnoff extraordinary about it. Check out all these items they have. Knowing Jack, my producer, will be all over some of these for $12.99. SmirnoffDrops.com. Please drink responsibly. Smirnoff number 21 vodka, sold from grain, 40% alcohol by volume. The Smirnoff Company here in New York, pricing at the sole discretion of the retailer. May vary by state. Please not share with anyone under legal drinking age.
Tuck's Takes.
All right, Ross, the Chargers, they are set to play a home game in Brazil this upcoming season.
I think we now know all the international games in terms of who the home team is and where the games will be, you know, with Germany and Brazil and et cetera. Man, LA is a long way from Brazil, bro. That is a long flight. But I'm glad Brazil's getting another game, and who knows? The team that won in Brazil last year won the Super Bowl, so didn't affect them that negatively. And you know how I feel. We have a lot of international listeners, people that watch us, youtube.com/RossTuckerNFL. If you really love the game, like I do, you want the international games because you want more people to experience the sickness, the disease that we call American football.
The salary cap is projected to be $279.5 million now this upcoming season. Another huge jump up from $255 million this year.
Yeah, so it'll be somewhere between 277.5 and 281.5. I just say 279.5 because that's right in the middle. That's up $53 million over the last 2 years. That is a huge number, and a lot of stuff kicking in, right? Some of these new streaming deals, the extra game, more money from sports betting partnerships. I'm thrilled for these guys. I'm thrilled. You know, this is also when people say, oh, the NFL is greedy. They just want the money for this. But yeah, the players get almost half. And I'm thrilled for these guys. I want these guys to get as much money as possible because they are absolutely doing damage to their bodies and probably their brains. And so this should be the payoff. The payoff should be trying to get as much financial security for your family as possible. That also, by the way, is good news for teams that might be tight against the cap or have a bunch of free agents that they need to try to bring back.
And the Eagles have the replacement for Kellen Moore, naming Kevin Patullo their next OC.
So I talked about this already on this morning's Ross Report on social media that I post at Ross Tucker NFL. I do, I don't know, off-season, maybe 2 or 3 a week that are Eagles-centric since I do so much Philly/Eagles type stuff, working, doing some work for the team. I have no idea how he'll do. He's never been a play caller before. How could anybody? You know, I think there's some pros and cons to that. Certainly I like that Sirianni likes him and that he's been working with Jalen Hurts since Hurts was a rookie. Or since Hurts' second year. That's a really good sign. But I don't know how you can really know what to expect from a new play caller like that. I know this. We've got winners. Alex Barker made a comment on Instagram, and Matt Mullen bought a box from futurefans.com for his 2 boys that are 8 and 3. I love that. Joe DeBell made an Instagram comment. So all of you email me, ross@rosstucker.com. I still have a bunch of awesome press passes from the season. Not only that, I still am having trouble going through all of the responses to potential show changes. Wow, we got hundreds of emails. Probably would have been a better way to go about that, but we'll try. The last thing I want you guys to think about before the show ends, my friends at Labatt. Get cool stuff for doing what you were going to do anyway. Drink beer. With Buy Beer, Get Gear from Labatt, just head to the website, snap a photo of your receipt, upload it instantly to rack up points for exclusive merch. I love this idea. You get points for every purchase at any store, bar, or stadium, any size, any product, anywhere you're buying Labatt. Buy beer, get gear. Go to rewards.labattusa.com to sign up. Other than that, I think we're done here.
Thanks for tuning in to the Ross Tucker Football Podcast. Make sure to also check out Even Money, Fantasy Feast, and College Draft, all on the DraftKings Network on Samsung TV Plus, YouTube, or subscribe to the podcast on your favorite platform.
Shout out myfrontpagestory.com. Never a bad time to get someone a lifelong keepsake gift that will bring tears to their eyes, and they will read it at least once a week. Birthdays, anniversaries, Mother's Day will be here before you know it. myfrontpagestory.com. Backoffescheduler.com, humanheadnyc.com, Sporticulture, Pizza Boy Brewing.